Good morning. Happy Thursday to all of you. My name is Tim Harris. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. I am so glad you're with me. I'm so glad you're reading with me. We are cooking right through the book of Numbers. We're almost finished. Yesterday I was working on the remaining schedule for 10 with Tim, and absolutely we're going to finish. We're going to finish the Bible together. And it kind of makes me sad. I don't know what I'm going to do that day, y'all. That's going to be amazing. We started this in 2020, and some of us have done this every single day together. What a blessing. So let's just savor the time while we've got it and pray for God for what comes next. Numbers chapter 26. Okay. Numbers chapter 26 is probably not why you have been with me. It's not an example of it's not the best passage you've probably read in your life, but it's good. And let's talk about why it's good. And again, I gave you permission to skim. I try not to skim because I feel I'm the teacher, right? I feel like I should know what's here. And I think you can probably get a pretty good idea of what's there just by skimming. And I think that's fine. That's not being unfaithful or disrespectful of God's word. It's not all there for devotional purposes, you all. Sometimes it's just the record, and this is a census. It's a historical record. And it's important. And let's talk about why it's important. First off, chapter 26 begins with after the plague. We're talking about that terrible seduction of Israel by Moab, which we talked about yesterday. How Balaam had tried to curse him, but ultimately you didn't have to curse him if you can just invite them to come on over and worship Baal, which is what they did. So there was a terrible plague. Notice that it was especially toward Zimri, who was the man who took some cheap woman from Moab into his, tent, all of that. Remember that. So notice he was from the tribe of Simeon. That's noted. And then now, after that plague, after the death of all of those who were ringleaders and most guilty, now God says to Moses and Eleazar, the son of Aaron, do a census. We're going to count all the people. Now, you're probably thinking, didn't we already do this? We did, y'all. It was 40 years ago, chapter 1 of Numbers. Yeah, we're back to where we started. But I remind you, this whole deal wasn't supposed to be a 40-year journey. It was just a couple of days, and they're going to be in the promised land. But, like us, they did it the hard way. They went the long way of disobedience. And also, if you recall, they got to the promised land. They refused to enter. And so God said, all right, you won't go, so you'll never see it. Now you're just going to wander until all of you are dead. So it's the next generation. It's the next generation. And so that leadership transition is, of course, exemplified when, God says to Moses and Eleazar, the son of Aaron. So we got the next generation of priests and the new generation of counting the census. And so this is what's happening. This isn't just a head count. It's not really that. It's more of it's a divine audit of faithfulness and preparation for going into the promised land. Notice what it says there. There on the plains of Moab, beside the Jordan River, across from Jericho. So they're right there. And so this is just logistical preparation for taking the land. There's going to be some battles to fight. We got to know how many fighting men we have. And so this is what we're doing. Again, yes, we did it a generation ago, but that generation was not faithful. We're hoping for something better from this generation. And so the census is undertaken. Now, part of what you'll notice, let me just call out some high points here. From verse 5 to verse 51, it's just a tribe by tribe roll call. Some of the things I noticed. First off, Judah is still strong. The tribe of Judah remains strong. They still got 76,500, we find out in verse 22. So Judah remains strong. But notice how the tribe of Simeon has decreased dramatically. They started out at 59,300 in the first census. Now they're down to 22,200, 22,200. And that probably reflects their participation in that rebellion, the seduction of the men at Peor from the Moabite women. Remember, I just talked about that. So that tribe of Simeon was probably mostly affected by that plague. They are wiped out to some extent. However, you'll notice that the total fighting men is at 601,730. previously, the previous generation, it was 603,000. So basically, we're there. God has preserved his fighting force. And I think that's a beautiful thing. After all the wandering, after all that they've done, eating manna, and quail and drinking water from the rock, we still have a fighting force. And I think that's really pretty magnificent. One of the things to note, and it says it in verse 11, is that actually not all the descendants of Korah died. Remember, Korah led the rebellion, the earth swallowed him up and all of that. But they didn't all die. And so there is this sign of mercy. God always leaves a remnant, right? And just to connect those dots, Psalm 42 through I think Psalm 49, and then Psalm 84 and 85, is it? Those are psalms from the descendants of Korah. So Psalm 42, isn't that as the deer pants for water? That was one of the sons of Korah. So from out of the rebellion and judgment of the fathers come these beautiful psalms from the sons. And so not all of Korah's descendants died. We find that out in this census. I think that's really pretty fantastic. Verses 52 to 56 talk about how the inheritance is going to be distributed in proportion to the tribal size, not just based on the numbers, but in proportion. And then verses 57 to 62, we have the Levites counted separately. Obviously, they aren't going to fight, and they don't really have an inheritance in the land, so to speak. And there are 23,000 males 1 month and older. We find out in verse 62. So we're counting the Levites there. The last couple of verses, 63 and 65, mention Joshua and Caleb, which is so funny to me. If y'all ever eat at Cambridge Market, which I sometimes do, I think it's an old person's place. I'm sorry to say that for me and for any of you who go there. It's also where all the old school teachers hang out. Any given day, I can go to Cambridge Market and I'm gonna see some school teacher that I had. I went to school in the 70s, y'all. I went to school in the 70s. And I thought they were old then, so you know how it is, like you see your old principal and you think, good golly, is he still living? How is he still living, Or I'll see one of my old school teachers and she was 100 in the 70s. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how is she still alive? And that's gotta be how the young people are when, Caleb comes out. It's like, good golly, is he still alive? How is he still alive? These are the oldest people, living. Joshua and Caleb are they're leftovers, the only two leftovers, Moses, from a previous generation. They're older than snot, It's just so funny to me because, Joshua and Caleb, these dudes rock it, God was faithful. God said everybody else is going to drop dead, but Joshua and Caleb, they were faithful, and they're going to see the promised land. And Joshua and Caleb are going to see the promised land, and I just love it, But anyway, if you've been looking for them the last 40 years, they've been at Cambridge Market with all my old school teachers. That's where you go and live forever. So probably eat there, y'all. Cambridge Market must be the fountain of youth. That's how you live forever. Anyway, that's chapter 26. I think it's pretty fantastic. You see how the wilderness functioned to sift Israel, to punish that previous generation, to grow up that young generation, to teach them to depend upon God, to get them ready for the promised land. And now, once more, 26 chapters later, we are where we started. We are on the threshold of the promised land. And so I love that. Pick up here with me tomorrow. Yeah, I know it's 4th of July. We'll still do it. If you're live, some of you may be more likely to be home and catch me live. So anyway, I'll do it. We'll be here tomorrow, 4th of July. We'll do Numbers chapter 27. This chapter starts with the daughters of Zelophehad, if that's how you say it, Zelophehad. Anyway, they're interesting. It's just interesting. It's just one of those passages you never heard, but it's kind of interesting. So we'll do the daughters of Zelophehad tomorrow and the rest of Numbers chapter 27. So listen, have a great Thursday. Stay in the Word. Stay cool, and I will see you in the morning, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 2.